Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at something you might not expect.
Yeah, not your typical source material.
Right. We're actually diving into a motivational story.
From, of all places, a popular Hindi YouTube channel.
You wouldn't think you'd find, profound life lessons there, but this one's pretty interesting, I gotta say.
Oh, absolutely. It's deceptive. Seems simple on the surface, but there's a lot to unpack.
It really is. So it's a tale about a king, a swan, and a pretty powerful message, especially given that it comes at the brink of death.
Definitely powerful. And the story uses some really classic elements to make its point, right from the start. You've got this king.
Figure of authority, right.
Exactly. Powerful, commanding, and he's out on a hunt with all his soldiers. But things don't go as planned.
Oh, no, not at all. The hunt's a complete failure. And this king, well, he's known for his temper.
Yeah, not exactly known for his patience.
And he lets everyone know he's not happy, starts blaming the soldiers, takes it out on them, the whole 9 yards.
Total meltdown.
Basically, yeah. And then, get this, he decides he's done, just going to storm back to the palace.
That's alone.
Yep, completely alone, even ditches his horse, says he'd rather walk.
Oh, talk about a temper tantrum. But that's where we start to see this classic tragic flaw emerge, right?
For sure. His pride, the lack of self-control, you can almost see the trouble coming.
It's like the story's telling us, watch what happens when you let your emotions run wild.
Exactly. So our furious king, after all that walking, he's exhausted.
I mean, who can blame him?
Right. So he decides to take a nap under a big tree, just trying to forget about the whole hunting fiasco.
If only he knew it was coming next. This is where things get interesting. Enter the swan, and this swan, he's about to have a really bad day.
Talk about wrong place, wrong time. But before the swan shows up, we have one more character, a crow.
Oh yeah, the crow. And his timing, well, couldn't be worse.
So picture this. You're the king, right?
Yeah.
You're finally asleep under this tree after a terrible day. And this crow decides that your royal robes are the perfect spot. Yeah, let's just say he leaves his mark.
Talk about adding insult to injury. But this little incident, it actually sets the stage for a much bigger lesson.
Because then comes the swan. Totally oblivious to what just happened, lands gracefully on the same branch the crow was on.
Oh, this poor swan. Classic symbol of purity and grace, about to become a victim of the king's anger.
It's a powerful image, right?
Yeah.
How easily innocence can get caught in the crossfire. So the king, he wakes up, sees his clothes, and doesn't even hesitate. Just assumes the swan did it.
Oh, man. Classic case of jumping to conclusions.
And in a fit of rage, grabs his bow and arrow, aims right at the swan.
Doesn't even stop to think, does he? Like, shoot first, ask questions later.
Not at all. Just pure emotion taking over. And the swan, well, it's mortally wounded. But before it takes its last breath, it says something that completely changes the story.
Yeah, this is where it gets really profound.
Instead of crying out in pain or blaming the king, the swan says, I have simply landed in the place of a wicked person.
Wow. So powerful. It's not about the king's actions at all. It's about the company you keep.
You're right. The swan is suggesting that its fate wasn't just bad luck. It was being near negativity.
Exactly. It makes you think, are we surrounding ourselves with people who lift us up or drag us down?
It's a question we should all ask ourselves. Think about the people you spend the most time with. Your friends, family, colleagues. Are they positive influences?
Right. Do they encourage you to be your best? Or are they constantly bringing negativity into your life?
And that brings us to the two big takeaways from the swan's message. The first, having a supportive network. People who inspire you.
Your cheer squad, right. The ones who celebrate your wins and pick you up when you're down.
Exactly. And the second takeaway, equally important, is learning to control your anger.
Like the king, his impulsiveness led to a tragedy. If he'd just paused, taken a breath, things might have been different.
That's where emotional intelligence comes in. Recognizing and managing those feelings, especially when things get tough.
You've got to create that space between feeling and reaction. Instead of letting anger take over, respond thoughtfully.
Cooler heads prevail. Right.
Exactly. The story reminds us, through the swan's dying words, that the company we keep and how we manage our emotions have a huge impact on our lives.
It's a call to be more intentional about who we surround ourselves with and how we react to challenges. It's amazing how such a simple story can be so insightful. And the themes, they're universal, right? Dealing with anger, seeking positive influences, striving for wisdom.
It really is. And you know what's interesting? It makes you think about not just who you're with, but where you choose to be.
What do you mean?
Well, the swan said, landed in the place of a wicked person. Like, we have a responsibility to choose environments that are good for us.
That's a great point. We have the power to create our own places, both physically and mentally.
Exactly. Choose to be in places that nourish your soul, inspire your mind, support your well-being.
Makes you think, we're always focused on reaching goals, chasing those dreams. But this story, it highlights something else, that environment we create for ourselves along the way.
Yeah, it matters, doesn't it? Like, imagine trying to grow a delicate flower, but in like the worst conditions possible. It might survive, but it won't really thrive, will it? You need the right soil, the sunlight, got to protect it from the elements.
In personal growth, it's kind of like that too, isn't it?
Absolutely. So how do we create that good environment for ourselves? It's easy to say, surround yourself with positivity, but how do you actually do it?
That's a good question. You can't just be like a magic spell or something.
Why? Well, I think it starts with awareness. Paying attention to how you feel after being with certain people. Do they energize you, or do you feel drained?
Like an emotional inventory of your relationship.
Exactly. Who are the energy givers? Who are the ones that kind of, well, take it all away?
And it's not always about like cutting people out completely.
No, not at all. Sometimes it's boundaries, limiting contact, or choosing to focus on the good parts of a relationship.
And it's not just about the people, is it? We can also be mindful of the places we're in, our homes, our workspaces, making them feel good, calm.
Yeah, that makes a difference. Even small things like plants, artwork, having natural light.
It's like designing your own little oasis, somewhere you can recharge and find some inspiration. But I bet some of our listeners are thinking, what about when you can't choose your environment?
Oh, I'm sure. Like a tough coworker or a family member who's just always negative.
That's where that second takeaway comes in, right?
Yeah.
Managing your own emotions.
Exactly. You can't always control what's happening around you, but you can control how you react to it.
So instead of getting swept up in anger or frustration, what can we do?
Well, there are things you can practice. Deep breathing, mindfulness. Try to reframe your thoughts. It helps you stay calm.
It's about building that inner strength, that resilience, so you can handle those tough situations without letting negativity win.
That's it. So, to wrap up this deep dive, I think the big question is, are your places and the people in them, are they helping you soar? Or are they holding you back? Because you really do have the power to choose.
I like that. It all comes back to choice. And hey, this motivational story from a Hindi YouTube channel, who would have thought it'd give us so much to think about? It just goes to show wisdom can be found in the most unexpected places.
Yeah.
So keep exploring, keep growing, keep choosing those places that help you thrive. And thanks for joining us on another deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations into those unexpected sources of wisdom.